Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Tony Gugliotto, and I'd like to welcome you to TransLink's third open board meeting for 2021. Thank you all for joining us virtually today. And so at this point, I'd like to call today's meeting to order. So I'd like to start by saying that we acknowledge, respect, and celebrate the Indigenous nations on whose territories we are fortunate to live, work, operate, and serve, and recognize that in planning and managing the region's transportation system, we have a role to play in supporting reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome two new faces to our public board meeting. The first is our new CEO. I'd like to welcome Kevin Quinn, who joined us a few months ago, but this is his first public meeting. Kevin came to TransLink from the Maryland Transit Administration, overseeing one of the largest multimodal transit systems in the United States. Kevin holds a master's degree in public policy from Johns Hopkins. He's a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners and was recognized as a top 40 under 40 transit professional in Mass Transit magazine. I have no doubt that TransLink will benefit from Kevin's bold, innovative, and customer-centered approach to leadership. And so, Kevin, welcome to TransLink and welcome to your first quarterly public board meeting. I'd also like to welcome our newest board member, Andrea Reimer. Now, many of you know Andrea from her work in municipal politics in Vancouver. She has a strong public voice with a focus on working with residents to build green, reconciled, and connected communities. Andrea has been a community volunteer, serving on boards of diverse organizations ranging from credit unions to universities to grassroots community groups. We are fortunate to have her voice on the TransLink board, and please extend your warmest welcome to Andrea. Now, I'd like to take a moment to recognize that September 30th is Truth and Reconciliation Day. The recent uncovering of the mass grave sites of residential schools has forced us all to take an honest look at Canadian historical and present treatment of Indigenous communities. I hope you can take the opportunity next week to pause, reflect, listen, learn, and recognize the tragic deaths of Indigenous children's history of assimilation policies and lasting physical and psychological impacts of the residential school system upon Indigenous peoples and communities. So with that brief introduction, we have a lot to discuss today. So I'll begin our meeting with our public delegations. And our first speaker is David Deng. So David, you have 5 minutes and I'll turn the floor to you.
Tony, unfortunately, it looks like David has not joined yet. And so I believe, and our second delegate has not joined yet. So I believe we're with our third delegate, Nathan.
Okay, so we'll move on to Nathan Daviditz. Nathan, are you there? Or you have the opportunity to speak first? And again, just to remind you, you do have 5 minutes because we do have a number of other speakers already lined up. So Nathan, over to you.
Do you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm talking about a couple of pages on your agenda, page 17 out of 88, which is page 10 of 11 of Coast Mountain Bus Company report. I got a letter from the transit branch of the Ministry of Transportation asking me to ask you to tell your CEO to post monthly statistics of our transit system. The Accountability Center and TransLink Ridership pages is a year behind in posting. The last posting was September 2020, and it's very limited information. And you submit monthly statistics by law to Statistics Canada, and you should provide that information. I should not be required to file an FOI for something that's available. My main concern is continuing cancellations of up to 500 bus trips every day. On some days, on some routes, the cancellation is even 100%, which means no buses at all on that particular bus route. The new CEO that knows that in the US, you have to provide proper statistics for the public national transit database, which is not mandatory in BC or Canada because we are, as usual, always behind the US. Now, the next page is page 81 of 88 about the bus stop balancing. We need to have all the, I mean, you had somebody 90 years old presented at your June meeting. Well, I know somebody who's 86 years old at 64th and Oak, and, I can bring a whole bunch of people to your meeting that are impacted by the cutbacks to the bus stops in the city of Vancouver on routes 2, 17, and 25. But I'm sure you don't want that, but the program is a waste of money, and the new CEO should cancel it and return or cancel bus stops. I mean, what's going to cost you money is what Vancouver City Council approved yesterday is the summer patio program, where patios are being placed on main bus routes. It's going to cost you millions of dollars of extra buses putting on the same routes to provide the same service, because the buses, the parking and the patios are allowed on many of those streets. And that's what you should be asking your staff. Why aren't you reporting to us about that? And why don't you work together with the city of Vancouver to fast get the buses moving fast on the main routes instead of slowing them down to 10 kilometers an hour, which is just unacceptable speed for buses. It's just too slow. Thank you very much for your attention.
Great. Thank you very much, Nathan. We'll move on to our next speaker, Ben. And Ben, I'm not sure I'm able to say your last name properly. Are you there?
Oak Street is.
Hello, Ben?
Oh, good. Yeah, hello, it's Ben Gannett here.
Yes, hi, Ben. Good morning. You have 5 minutes and you're on live right now, so please go ahead.
Oh, excellent. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair and TransLink Board of Directors, for allowing me to speak at your meeting this morning. My name is Ben Gannett. I am a career handy-dart driver. My custom transit career began on October the 20th, 1980. On April the 1st, 1981, I was officially a handy-dart driver. My career spanned the tenure of 4 handy-dart contractors. I worked for Vancouver Custom Transit, Pacific Transit Cooperative, Motor Vehicle Transportation, and First Transit Canada. I retired on April the 30th of this year. To give you a sense of who I am, I was the very first poster boy for the new handy-dart service. My image can be found on the very first pamphlet advertising the handy-dart service that was distributed throughout the Lower Mainland between 1982 and 92. There have been many handy-dart employees featured on TransLink on transit advertisements over the years, but I was the first one. The only copy of the pamphlet I could find was in the Vancouver Museum at 1100 Chestnut Street. I've been around long enough to be found in a museum. I would like to draw your attention to a retirement benefit awarded to Coast Mountain, Skytrain, and Seabus retirees, but not awarded to handy-dart retirees. I will illustrate the current retirement situation. When a Coast Mountain driver or a Seabus operator or a Skytrain employee retires, they hand in their employee transit pass, as well as their complimentary family passes, and receive a retirement lifetime transit pass. This issuance is offered to retiring employees after as little as 2 years of employment. When a handy-dart employee retires, like myself, after a career of 40 plus years, we are required to hand in our employee transit pass and are shown the door. There is no lifetime transit pass to validate our hard work, even though we are part of your TransLink family. We feel left out and unappreciated. I cannot stress enough how important and significant that benefit would be to employees of HandyDART, even though it may be little used. I am here, therefore, to respectfully ask that the retirement lifetime transit pass be awarded to HandyDART employees in a fashion similar to the way they are awarded to other employees within the transit services. The cost to TransLink to extend this benefit to HandyDART retirees would be minimal. Essentially, the cost of printing the pass and some modest unknown future revenue loss. HandyDART is a small transit service in comparison with other transit services, so the loss of revenue through forgiven fares would be small. In closing, I would like you to understand that this inequity has been raised more than once to the board by union representatives. I've always been deeply passionate about having this inequity addressed. However, I waited until I retired to give this topic my full attention. Thank you for thank you for taking the time to hear my presentation. That's it.
Great. Thank you very much, Ben. First of all, thank you for your years of service with HandyDART, and we really appreciate what you've done in terms of your service over those years, and hopefully you're enjoying retirement. I will ask our management, our new CEO, Kevin, to take your suggestion and to get back to you with an answer. But thank you for coming and speaking to us today. Our next speaker is Mark Beeching. Mark, are you on the line?
Hi, there,
Yes, hi, Mark.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you, Mark.
Hello?
Ed?
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I have been involved with HandyDART since its inception. My anniversary actually is this month, 41 years. HandyDART drivers, the men and women who provide HandyDART, are putting their lives on the line as we speak to provide a service that is an umbilical cord to the seniors and people with disabilities. This is a lifeline. The men and women that I've known put their lives on the line every day and, in fact, have dedicated themselves to this service. They've always been treated as substandard workers, whether it was having to put gumboots on to get into their bus because we play ping pong with depots, whether it's their wages, whether it's trying to take their pension away through contracting out. Every day, those workers keep going to work and providing a service that keeps people alive. And what I'm asking for today is to recognize the hard work these people are doing in a very, very small way. And that is to provide those people who have retired and who have spent a lifetime taking care of people that need it the most, a bus pass. That's all. And in reality, I spoke to one of our retirees. His name was Alex, and he called me just 2 days ago. And Alex has fallen, broken his hip, and damaged his kidney. So he has to be on dialysis. This man, who drove people day in and day out, and oftentimes drove conventional bus drivers that were able to use a lifetime pass, he now needs the service. He's a HandyDART passenger. And he has to pay where other workers in the conventional transit system have been honored with it's been given the token honor of a lifetime pass to show gratitude for the dedication they've they've given to the public. All I'm asking for is that our workers who are out there every day and are out there now driving your mothers, your brothers, your sisters, to give them that small token. Down the road, maybe we'll be talking about bringing us into the family of TransLink. But right now, all I'm asking for is that retired handy dart workers be given a bus pass, a lifetime bus pass. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mark. And again, thank you for your 41 years of service at Handy Dart. That's quite a contribution that you've made. The previous speaker, Ben, also raised this same issue and suggestion, and I'm going to ask our new CEO to take this under consideration, and he will get back to both you and Ben with a response. But thank you for coming today.
I deeply thank you so much.
Okay, our next speaker is Mr. Aquino. Mr. Aquino, are you on the line there?
Hello. Hello.
Yes, Mr.
Yeah.
Aquino. Yes,
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and the board members. I am Restituto Aquino. I'm formerly a CEO, president of a public transportation company in Southeast Asia. Anyway, I'm interested in your TransLink 10-year vision. Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
go ahead. We can hear you. I'm not sure if we just lost Mr. Aquino or is he still there?
Hello. I'm still here.
Yeah, go ahead. We can hear you, Mr. Aquino. Go. We
Okay.
heard what you said
Yeah.
so far.
Okay.
Just,
Right. All right. Yeah, there was some interruption. Okay. In line with the TransLink 10-year vision, particularly the low carbon strategy, I suggest that we include a hydrogen refueling station with on-site electrolyzer in a designated garage or location of a coast mountain bus company. I would suggest a pilot project with a fleet of 3 or 4 40-foot fuel cell electric bus. This would determine if you operate this, it would determine the actual advantages of the use of a fuel cell bus compared to diesel buses, natural gas, and battery buses. Now, my specific request is to keep up with the dynamic change in the technology on zero emission vehicle. I suggest we start looking now to use the use of fuel cell electric battery transit. These buses are now available in Canada, and we can do it on a pilot project basis. Hoping you give me a chance to give a more detailed presentation on my hydrogen refueling with an on-site electrolyzer project, which I submitted to the NR Canada ZEBI program last August 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aquino, for bringing this to our attention. And I'll ask our management team to take a look at what you've presented, and they will get back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of our public delegations. I know that we had a couple of folks at the beginning who weren't there. I'm not sure if they're still on, if they're on the line or not. But I'll just wait to hear from our corporate secretary to see if they're still on the line.
Chair, unfortunately, they haven't been able to join us today.
Okay, great. Okay, well, I guess thank you again to all the public delegates, and we will now move on to our agenda. So I'm going to, hang on a sec. Okay, so we're on item 3 of the agenda, which is the CEO report. So Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Board. So good morning, everyone. So my name is Kevin Quinn. I'm so pleased to be delivering my first management report to the Board as TransLink's new CEO. And so let's jump right in. I've been in this role for just over 2 months now, and you could say it's been a bit of a whirlwind. I'm a really true believer in the importance of listening when you're new to an organization, and as CEO, I want to hear really as many diverse perspectives as possible to ensure I've got a well-rounded understanding. And that's why I've made it my top priority to speak with employees from all different corners of TransLink, the TransLink enterprise, and really meet them where they work. And so in the roughly 2 months since starting, I've visited every bus depot, the Skytrain OMC, numerous Skytrain stations, transit security and C-bus facilities to meet our employees really on the front lines. I've also held many virtual meetings with corporate employees from divisions across TransLink, CNBC, and BCRTC. And in total, I've spent over 100 hours connecting with people and listening to their thoughts and their ideas. And in addition to engaging with employees, I've looked externally and met with over 40 stakeholder groups and partners, including members of the business community, other transit organizations, mayors from across our region, senior government officials, and of course, our customers. Recently, I shared my top priorities and vision for TransLink through interviews with 8 different media outlets and have taken part in 3 different press conference events to mark major projects or milestones. So it's been a busy couple of months. Let's go to the next slide. And I want to just share some early observations. And so far, my impression is really that Metro Vancouver is a region that truly cares about transit. This is evident in the passion of our employees, in the way that our different levels of government work together, and in the eagerness of our partners to continue collaborating with TransLink. In short, people like working here and our partners like working with us. It's also clear to me that we have a very strong, robust transit system that is set up for success. I've observed that TransLink is woven into the fabric of the Metro Vancouver region. We don't just serve the community, we also contribute to the community. We're part of the community. This was most evident to me when I attended one of our mobile vaccination bus clinics in Burnaby recently. I got to see firsthand the impact our organization has on helping the people of Metro Vancouver. I also had the chance to chat with many customers at the PNE in August recently, where we had our Reconnect bus on display, really showcasing the many ways we're keeping customers safe as they return to transit. It was great to meet customers face to face and better understand how they feel about TransLink and the services that we provide. Moving forward, I want TransLink to really lean into this role as a community building organization and find ways to connect with our customers and forge new partnerships. And that's because today transit agencies, they're not just about getting you from A to B. Transit agencies are influential on issues like affordable housing, social equity, and on climate change. And we play an important role in the community, and I think we have to act like it. A good example of this was our recent media event marking the maiden voyage of the new Burrard Chinook Sea Bus. And as part of that event, we worked in lockstep with the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations to ensure they were an integral part of the celebration and to reflect our enterprise's journey towards true reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. That ceremony was really meaningful for me and for many of you who were in attendance. I know it was meaningful, and I think it's a real step in the right direction, but I know that we can do even more. As you all know, on September 30th, Canada will observe National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, new federal statutory day that recognizes the colonial legacy of residential schools, honor Indigenous survivors, and is vital to the ongoing reconciliation process. And at TransLink, we have several activities planned for that entire week, which runs from September 27th to October 1st, really to empower our employees to learn, to listen, to converse. And we'll be sharing learning resources, hosting lunch and learn sessions. We've invited a guest speaker to guide a conversation with our employees around reconciliation and building sustaining relationships. Go ahead and jump to the next slide. I'd like to share some corporate updates on some recent initiatives on projects First, in late August, BC's provincial health officer issued a new order requiring masks or face covering in indoor public settings. And as a result of this policy change, we had to react pretty quickly and reinstate our mandate requiring masks while using public transit and update signage all across our system. Very encouragingly, we've seen a very high degree of compliance from our customers. For example, on Skytrain, recent surveys have found between 96 to 98% of our customers are wearing masks. I personally take transit every day to the office. I've rarely seen anyone without a mask. On September 6th, we rolled out our new service changes, which increased frequency and reach in areas where customers really need it the most. And much of that focus was on routes serving post-secondary institutions as students return to in-person learning, including routes serving the University of British Columbia, Simon Fraser University, Capilano University, and more. We also brought back 10-minute C-bus service during rush hours and added back Train 4 to the West Coast Express in the mornings and afternoons to help serve customers commuting to and from workplaces in downtown Vancouver. Throughout the pandemic, our team has been monitoring travel patterns and really using these findings to reallocate service to reduce crowding. We've also recently launched a great partnership with the Transit app, which allows customers to check how full buses are ahead of time and to use that data to plan their trip accordingly. Let's jump to the next slide. I just want to give a brief ridership update. September often marks the beginning of a new year for many due to the return of school and traditionally a return to the office from summer vacation for many people. And so I'd like to share just some insights with you on our latest ridership data from early September. So during the week of back to school, we saw our highest jump in ridership since the beginning of the pandemic. And I'm pleased to share with you that for the 4 days following Labor Day, September 7th to September 10th, they were the busiest days our system has seen in 18 months. All combined, there were over 3.4 million boardings during those 4 days, which is a 16% increase in ridership over the previous week. On average, we recorded 850,000 boardings a day, or 120,000 more than the week before. Our single highest day was Friday, September 10th, which saw 880,000 boardings. This increase can largely be attributed to post-secondary students returning to in-class learning at campuses across our region. So these are really encouraging signs that our customers are comfortable returning to transit when they need to for school or for work. And in fact, our ridership has been growing steadily since June with week-over-week increases throughout the summer. So although these are still early days, it's really promising, I think, to see transit moving in the right direction, our customers returning to the system. In the board report that you all received in advance of this meeting, we noted that overall system ridership is around 52% of pre-COVID journeys, about 53% of pre-COVID boardings. Since that report was created, I'm pleased to tell you the numbers have inched up just a little higher to 53.7% of pre-COVID journeys and 54.5% of pre-COVID boardings. These numbers cover up to September 19th. Ridership on most of our modes has recovered to at least 50% of pre-COVID levels, with bus really leading the way at 55%. The routes that primarily serve industrial areas where essential workers are traveling have now almost fully recovered to pre-COVID levels. So for example, the Route 418 serving the Kingswood area of Richmond and Route 175 serving Dominion Triangle and Port Coquitlam are now at 95% of pre-COVID ridership. Also, routes that serve post-secondary institutions have also seen significant ridership increases. So if you take Route 49, for example, which serves UBC, that's increased from 37% of pre-COVID ridership in the fall of 2020, now to 71% in September of 2021. So what these numbers show us, I think, is that ridership is recovering quickest in the areas where customers are returning to their pre-pandemic routines, first with frontline workers and now post-secondary students. In the coming months, we know that more companies will be gradually bringing their employees back to downtown offices. And as we prepare for that shift, it's really important now to urge commuters to use transit. That's because the habits they set as they return to work will be really important for us in the long term. And so in the coming weeks, we'll be marketing our transit system to casual customers and commuters through our new Ride On campaign. While these September ridership figures I presented are very preliminary, I wanted to share this news with you, our board members, as a sign that we are certainly headed in the right direction. And I'll provide a further update next week to the Mayor's Council, which will include another week's worth of data up through September 26th. Just some capital project updates. If you jump to the next slide. In August, as you know, construction took place to replace aging expansion joints on the Skytrain tracks of the Skybridge, which serves as a key connection for Expo Line service between New Westminster and Surrey. So these expansion joints had not been replaced since their construction and had really reached the end of their useful lives. This important investment, which forms part of our maintenance and upgrade program, will keep trains moving safely and smoothly for years to come. And I'm really proud of the team that worked on this project. So despite the first window of work actually running 6 hours longer than planned due to some rain that we received, the team completed significant additional work during both events, and that resulted in the second window finishing 2 days early than originally anticipated. This meant full service over the Skybridge was actually restored 48 hours sooner than had been promised to customers. At the beginning of this month, I also joined Mayor Malcolm Brodie in the city of Richmond to break ground on a new Canada Line station that will help deliver better transit to the city of Richmond and the Capstan Village area. The new station will be built in the heart of a growing community in Richmond and will really help make transit the #1 transportation option for those residents. It's expected to open in 2023 and will provide easier access to rapid transit between Bridgeport and Aberdeen stations. In other news, we recently placed an order for 15 new battery electric buses. That's part of our plan to replace all of our retiring conventional diesel buses with battery electric buses. These are expected to arrive in 2022. This will bring our battery electric fleet to 19 and will help us fully electrify Route 100, serving customers in Surrey, New West, Burnaby, and Vancouver. I also want to provide the board with a quick update on the Surrey Langley Skytrain project, which, as you know, will be delivered by the province of British Columbia. So recently, there were some comments made in the media suggesting that the project has been delayed in some way. And I really want to take this opportunity to clarify that that is not the case, and the project has not been delayed. Originally, TransLink was anticipating the delivery of phase 1 to Fleetwood in 2025. Phase 2 to Langley City was targeted to be complete by 2030 and required approvals in a future investment plan. Last year, the provincial government committed to delivering the entire project and took on the Surrey Langley Skytrain as a provincial capital project. And since that time, the province has made the determination that it will be more efficient, less costly, and more practical to build it all in one phase. And this means a target completion date of 2028. That date reflects a bigger, better project that will ultimately be built more quickly and at less cost than by splitting it into 2 phases as originally contemplated. If you want to move to the next slide, I'll just want to close with a few remarks and share a recent headline with you from the Globe and Mail newspaper from an interview that I did with Francis Beulah, and it reads, TransLink has an optimistic new chief for challenging times. And I want to note, I like this headline. I think it succinctly captures this moment in our organization's history, because there's no question that we find ourselves immersed in challenging times. COVID has thrown things at our organization that we've never seen before. And in many ways, we've really risen to that challenge through the pandemic, though the pandemic has also identified some ways we need to improve and do better. For example, I believe we need to be even more nimble, more data-driven, and more transparent with our customers about the decisions we make, including how we arrived at them. We also need to ask ourselves some tough questions. Are we continuing to provide service when and where our customers need it? Are we continuing to be responsive to the shifts that we're seeing out of the pandemic? Does the product that we have out there still make sense? Now, these are big existential questions that we're going to be grappling with in the weeks, months, and years ahead. But as that headline states, I'm also very optimistic about what lies ahead. In terms of ridership, we're on track with our projections. I feel strongly that we'll get back to 70 to 80% of pre-COVID levels by the end of 2022. And in some ways, I think there's never been a more exciting time to work in the public transit business. There's lots going on. New technology is emerging that really has the potential to transform our services. There's an appetite from senior levels of government to partner and to invest. And to that end, I would like to congratulate Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party of Canada on winning the federal election earlier this week. And on behalf of all of us at TransLink, I'd like to express our steadfast commitment to continuing to work with the federal government and cabinet ministers to improve mobility options for the people of Metro Vancouver and invest in transformational long-term capital projects. So in closing, we're just getting started. And I'm looking forward to working with those of you around the board table as we continue to evolve the TransLink enterprise. Thank you so much. Happy to be here again for my first meeting. Happy to take any questions that you have. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Kevin. And though it's been a few months, just from your report, we can see that you've been extremely busy. And so that's great to see. It's also encouraging to see that the ridership numbers are increasing. And I think we look forward, as more of the economy opens up, to getting close to where we were pre-pandemic. So there are a few questions for you. So I'll turn it to Lorraine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Kevin, I just wanted to commend you on all the outreach work that you've been doing. I can't think of a better way for somebody new to this region to get out and actually meet the people and see all of the parts of Metro Vancouver so that you can understand who you're dealing with and the region that you're serving. So I just wanted to commend you on all of that work. I know it was a lot at the beginning to do. You moved your family here and you were setting up and having gone through quarantine. And I just want to commend you on all that work and the hours that you did at unusual times. I think it was outstanding. Thank you so much.
It's been a really warm welcome by staff all across the enterprise. And so it's been great landing here with my family, getting to know the region, getting out and about quite a bit. So thank you.
Okay, Harj, you have a question for Kevin.
I do, and again, Kevin, welcome to Vancouver. It's great to have you on this meeting, and to have you in all the other meetings as well. You're a breath of fresh air. It's great to have so much optimism. I just have a quick question around the ridership. I mean, this is maybe something you can't answer right now, but the recovery seems to be going well. But at the same time, there seems to be a little bit of a societal shift in terms of, adopting work from home or remote working. Do you think we could ever get back to that 100% level, or is this going to be a shift and something that TransLink will have to sort of model and look forward to?
Yeah, so I know the team is really modeling that. I mean, I think, we are seeing some deep societal shifts in sort of these hybrid work patterns, right? Where folks are adopting more work from home types of models. And my take is that that's probably here to stay. I think we do have that possibility to get back to 100%. I think that that's really as a result potentially of some of the great expansions that we're doing, a lot of people moving into the region. So it may not be the same 100% that was on the system before. It could be sort of a different 100%. But I do remain optimistic that our ridership will come back strong.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Seeing no other questions, I think we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda. We're going to be receiving a report from Michelle Ladrac, who's President and General Manager of the BC Rapid Transit Company. So Michelle, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of the board, for having me. Next slide, please. This is our agenda for today, and I just want to emphasize how important it is always to create a smooth and pleasant experience for all our customers, and safe on top of that. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. So we cannot start this meeting like any other meeting without talking about zero harm, because that's what we achieved to do. We are still below target, although we did see a small increase in the number of lost time claims, but it's below what we aim for. It's never good enough. We always try to do better every day and reduce and make sure that people can return home safe. We are proactive in that sense, and we have two key initiatives. One is the planned task observation, where we meet people on the shop floor, work with them, and see how we can improve their safety whilst they're doing their task. And the other one is Safe Start, where we do focus on people's behaviors, and particularly on how they do their job. And in short, it's hands on the ball, eyes on the ball, and mind on the ball, to make sure that when you start your task, you're fully prepared. And hopefully that will lead to further reductions of small injuries. Next slide, please. Passenger safety is a little bit of a jigsaw, and also a little bit of an anomaly. We've done quite well. The passenger injury rate is slightly above target, but if you look from 2017, it's still on a downwards trend. Now, we're very aware of the lower number of passengers that ride our system, and that does influence our rate a little bit. But if you look at actual numbers, then the total is still coming down. As passengers return to the system, it seems that they are a little bit more vigilant, a little bit less vigilant. And we've seen more slips, trips, and falls on escalators. We've also seen some people stumbling whilst they were inside trains. We keep addressing this by informing passengers and starting campaigns towards the end of the year and during the fall to make sure that people are more aware of the risks that come with traveling the system. Next slide, please. Our on-time performance is well above target, and mind you, this is within 3 minutes. And we did well this quarter, and we have been consistently performing well this year. What you see here is that June was a bit of a challenge because of the heat dome. And I will say a little bit more about that on the next slide. We had 7 delays between 16 and 30 minutes, and that was actually the lowest since 2016. Unfortunately, we also had a little bit more delays above 30 minutes. Those are always the most challenging ones for customers. But what we're doing is we've actually changed our approach so that we recover more quickly from those incidents. So in 2021, we worked with the control room to make sure that we implement an alternative service when we have a major incident so that we can recover quickly. And that's actually working out. So although we saw a higher number of longer delays, mostly of those outside of our control, but what we're doing is to actually mitigate the impact of those to make sure that people have a regular service quicker. That 50% of all these issues that we experienced was train human contact or people getting into the guideway. So really issues where we have to be very careful about running a service. Next slide, please. So the heat dome was something special, and as you can see that on 2 days we didn't do tremendously well, and on 1 day, which was probably the hottest day, we had about 57% punctuality. I shouldn't say this, but it reads worse than it is, because we still delivered a good service in the sense that we ran most of our trains. It also means in effect that trains were generally running later, and on average it was about 6 minutes later. That means that if you would get onto the train at Waterfront and would travel to King George, you would be 6 minutes late. And the reason is that we had to slow down trains a little bit. When the heat goes up, there's more stress on our system, and by running trains a little bit slower, we protect our system and our assets. So it's good practice worldwide, and we've basically implemented it here for Vancouver. I think we did a great job communicating about what was going on. I think people understood. We tried to put in as many trains with air conditioning as possible so that they could be comfortable as far as we could provide those trains. And if we hadn't slowed trains down, then our performance would have been about 93%. So this is a good lesson learned. We expect more of these situations in future. So we've harnessed all our lessons learned in our practices, and obviously we're trying to do better next year. Next slide, please. This is a very detailed slide, but this tells you something about how this is one of our key initiatives within BCRTC. And this is about quality management and increasing quality management. And it's basically around 3 C's. The first C is capturing experience. We're 35 years old now, and we see high levels of people retiring after 35 years of service. And we need to capture that experience and improve on it and make sure that we keep it for the next generation. The second one is around continuous improvement. Without that experience and without capturing it, we cannot improve on what we've done in the past. And then thirdly, we want to have consistency, because that's what our customers expect. They expect a reliable, consistent service throughout the day that gives them trust in the system and will make them return back to riding Skytrain. And this is one of our flyers that we use to communicate relatively complex ideas in an approachable way and get people on board with this. And I think it's a good initiative, and you'll see and hear more about it. Next slide, please. So Kevin already said most of it about our Skybridge expansion joint replacement for the first time in 30 years almost. We had 2 shutdowns of almost a week where we, as we captured lessons learned from the first week and then implemented those during the second week, and we managed to actually be 48 hours ready within 48 hours sooner than expected and planned. We came across more than we expected, and thanks to the team and all those people who are in the space of ordering parts, creating the logistics, keeping people well fed and protected against the sun, because it was actually quite a hot day. We did tremendously well. Also good to know that this is probably something that we will see more. So as you might remember, last year we had a 52-hour shutdown of Waterfront Station, and this year we had 2 weekly shutdowns of the Skybridge, where we had to reduce frequency. And basically our headway went from 6 minutes to 15 minutes, but we informed passengers well, and we made sure that there was always enough capacity to move people. And this is probably we're going to see more. We're expanding the network. There's much more engineering work going on. And in order to keep up with what needs to happen and all the exciting things that are currently taking place, this is probably something that we will see more often and that we need to take into account when we think about long-term maintenance strategies. Also of interest for those who are interested in grinding and keeping our rails smooth so they won't cause any noise pollution. Unfortunately, during the last weeks of June, July, and early August, we had to stop our grinding efforts because of fire hazard. Grinding comes with sparks, and it was just too dry to chance it. Next slide, please. And these are our capital and major projects. The photo at the right-hand side at the bottom, that's one of the joints that we're currently replacing in the yard. These are also 30 years old. So that's quite a lifetime for these joints, and they were really worn out, and we're currently replacing them to make sure that we can move our trains out of the yard timely and safely, and make sure that the new ones last for another 30 years. At the same time, we're doing our regular upgrades. As you know, OMC1 is being upgraded for our future Mark V trains, and we need an extra shed to actually accommodate those trains. And we're also working at the OMC2 site to prep the site for the future operations and control center that's going to be built right there. And finally, we continue our efforts to replace old escalators. Some of them also 30 years old, and currently we have completed 8 stations. Next slide, please. Then finally, some recognition for 2 of my employees, Christopher and Dominic. As you may know, a couple of weeks ago, we had Suicide Prevention Day, and I want to highlight their efforts. So they came across a man who wanted to harm himself. They acknowledged that this was the case, and thanks to them, they cautiously engaged with them. They showed extreme empathy, and they actually gave them the man an attentive ear. And eventually they were able to talk him out of harming himself and getting him into safety. These are guideway people, right? They're not SCAs, they're not trained for it, but they were just being humans doing a human thing. And actually that is what we hope to encourage within Skytrain. We're all this, we're one family, and we all care about our customers and our product. So this was a great initiative by Dominic and Christopher. And then finally, next slide, please. Some evidence that Kevin actually did visit Skytrain, and we had a great time together. And I hope he enjoyed it, and that we conveyed everything that we wanted to say. Next slide, please. So thank you very much for your attention, and happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Michelle, and the board also appreciates Dominic and Christopher for what they did, and I think that bodes well in terms of recognizing them. Obviously, it was an important act of kindness, and we thank them for doing that. So we have a couple of questions for you, Michelle. I'll start first with Larry Beasley.
Thank you, Michelle. I was really appreciated to hear the comments on noise, our noise management issue. Wanted to find out what the complaint profile is looking like now with this. We have the new grinding regime going on. I know there were some moments I had to stop, but we are doing a lot more of it consistently. And want to specifically follow up, because we've been tracking the noise situation at the east end of False Creek. We've had a lot of concerns there. Have we seen noise complaints go down in that area? What has been our engagement with the people there who were concerned?
Thank you, Larry. So what I can say is that yes, we do get complaints, and they never seem to go away, but we always respond to them. So what we always do is as soon as we get a complaint, we go out there, we measure to validate what's actually the case, and we'll try and organize maintenance in that area within the next fortnight. And so far, we've always been able to do so. Some stretches at the network will always be more challenging than others, and the particular area that you mentioned is one of those areas. And more is needed, like putting in harder steel to really reduce those complaints. But we're responding as quickly as we can. As you know, we have this working group that looks at a number of several options. One of them is put dampeners in, to put harder steel in, to work with local communities so that people are less exposed. So we're taking all kinds of measures to reduce noise, right? That costs a lot of money. And so far we do everything we can within our budget and within the investment capital that is available. But we're responding quickly. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer because the real issue, resolution is often to do something more dramatic, like putting in harder steel, and we can't do that just overnight. It takes a little bit longer, but generally we respond. It's a wavy pattern. So it's sometimes we get more complaints than other days. We've had a long period where we didn't have any complaints in that quarter, where we actually got compliments from people saying, well, I was actually surprised how quickly we responded. But it would be unfair to say that we had stopped the problem entirely, because that's not the case. But we're trying to respond as good as we can.
So I'm hoping that will remain, and I know it will remain, a priority for the team. Also, given that there's going to be a significant amount of new development in that same vicinity over the next 5 years, it might also be sensible to be in touch with the City of Vancouver about motivating them to include more noise abatement in the new developments themselves as well.
Yeah, so my colleague Jeff Busby of engineering, he published a report recently exactly for those stakeholders, saying that if people want to buy near Skytrain, to inform them about what's possible to limit noise pollution for their residents.
Good, thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Larry. Marcella?
Well, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Michelle, for your excellent report. I just want to commend you on your performance week. Terrific results. And I also want to commend you on your response to the heat dome that we had here in Vancouver. You've had a lot of work on preparation for winter and sleet and snow and heavy rain, but that was a new one for you. And you did a lot of work to take care of our customers, our people, and the environment. So thank you for that. A question I have around the work that you're doing on the McNeil report, which has been a long journey and sounds like you're close to the end of it. Will you be doing an audit of the work that you've done around implementation of the McNeil report, and what, if anything, may be next steps, if any?
So I can confirm that we have asked internal audit to do an audit on the McNeil report, and not so much if we implemented all the initiatives, because we did. I'm quite convinced that we did, but also to see if we lived up to the spirit of the McNeil report. So not only that we ticked the boxes, but also that we will keep ticking boxes in the near future, right? So otherwise, there's no improvement. So yeah, that's on the agenda.
Okay. Thanks. I'll be looking forward to that, Michelle. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Marcella. Lorraine?
Thank you, Chair. Michelle, again, thank you for your report. I note the ambitious projects that you have in front of you. The system is aging, and we have a lot to do running the system and maintaining the system and doing all the work that you want to accomplish. And I'm just curious, with this worldwide shortage of people to work and skilled workers, if you're starting to experience any problems in acquiring people to do all the work that you have on your plate ahead of you.
Thank you, Lorraine. So far, we have not yet experienced problems to actually do all the capital work that we were supposed to do. So that's probably the good news. But I'm with you. I think there's a little bit of tension there, what to expect in future. And personally, I've experienced that recruiting critical positions for BCRTC takes a lot longer than it used to do. So we are planning to improve our recruitment efforts. And I've been speaking to the VP Human Resources and a team to see how we can target the niche market so that BCRTC is able to deliver what it's supposed to deliver. But it's definitely a challenge.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. I don't see any other hands. So thank you, Michelle, for your report.
Thank you very much.
And, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is to receive a report from Mike McDaniel, who's our president and general manager of the Coast Mountain Bus Company. So, Mike, are you there?
Tony, I don't know if you can see Mike, but he seems to be attempting to talk, but not having any success.
Okay.
We can't hear him.
Yeah, I can't see him or hear him. So
yeah, he's
I'm not
there.
sure.
He's trying to actually start his report.
Okay. I'm just wondering if he's having technical issues, maybe we can move on to hear from Dave Jones from the Transit Police, and then we'll circle back to Mike. Is Dave available?
Ready and willing there.
Okay. Thank you for stepping in a little bit earlier, Dave. We appreciate that, but I'll turn it over to you.
Always arriving on time, we like to say. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the board and the public for the opportunity today to speak to yourselves about updates with the Metro Vancouver Transit Police. And I did want to just also welcome our new CEO, Kevin Quinn, to his first board meeting, and knowing that he has settled in well and has been a great assistance to us so far, starting here. So look forward to many years of working together. So the Transit Police, next slide. One of the things I'm just going to highlight in this month's reports is kind of the work we've been doing in terms of public assistance, outreach, and with the vulnerable. One of the things that we look at is that we've had a combination of a pandemic, we've had a 5-year opioid crisis going on, and other strains and stresses that have been occurring within the public and those in vulnerable situations. This, of course, has led to what you see here as an increase in the number of people who have found themselves during an emotional crisis at times. You see that the number of times we've dealt with someone, I would say, in an emotional crisis or in a suicidal event has climbed up 18% and 47% year over year in terms of it. However, to support this, part of it is, and we see from Michelle's presentation, there are other staff members who are aware of the individuals and risks that may be occurring and are offering intervening and making even ourselves aware. And then the Transit Police are trained in crisis de-escalation training that keeps going on and trauma-informed practices. We operate with our healthcare providers throughout various jurisdictions to support vulnerable people, preventing the suicides, to manage the impacts of what we'll call unfortunate events, both in and around the system. Next slide. So part of that, again, we just noted is that the opioid crisis continues. And one of the things just of note is from Q1 to Q2 here is that our saves, or what we call naloxone saves, is up 94%. Now, naloxone is the reversing agent for an opioid overdose. And in 2020 alone, our saves were 60% higher than the prior 3 years, and this year we're 94% higher. One of the I say manner in which we're locating these individuals is these are what we call on view occasions. Our members out patrolling in and around the transit system, finding individuals who are in a state of distress and require medical attention. And because we've equipped our members with the Narcan nasal spray, they're able to intervene and revive the individual before medical attention is received. This also includes that Constable Julian Poncion has some volunteers working for him in the Waterfront Community Police Center downtown. And even the volunteers themselves have located individuals in the area who required medical attention, brought it to and assisted in the immediate side and got medical attention from individuals preventing a tragic death. Next slide. We have continued and actually expanded a bit. What we are put here is our homeless assistance. We use neighborhood police officers, and in particular Constable Bruce Shipley, and we engage with the Minister of Social Development and Representation, and we will make patrols in and around the transit, these major transit hubs and areas where individuals who are homeless have set up a place to live. Our goal when we make these visits is not to, I'm going to say, disrupt or displace the individuals. It is tried to work with them to find housing, to ensure their safety, to see if there's other forms of assistance that needs to occur, and generally then work with other agencies or the jurisdictional police or other community groups that are able to assist the individuals. We find that this is part of keeping what we'll call as our community safe, is looking not to what I'll call target, but to find an outreach mechanism to hopefully get people assistance that they require. So this project has been led by Constable Shipley. Other members have also joined in on it, but he presents on this to other police agencies and recently was giving some media presentations on this on local radio stations. Next slide. Just a comment that obviously over the summer, and as much as we were also involved with this heat dome and extreme heat while we were working, we deployed our members with extra water that we stocked in the vehicles, not only for ourselves, but for others who we may come across, and we're able to assist with it. But of note, as the grasses and areas and bushes around some of our station areas became dry, we were also aware of the risk of fire, and on a couple of occasions actually detected fires occurring near our infrastructure, and we're able to have it extinguished with the assistance of the local fire departments. Next slide. Again, onto community outreach. One of the things that was very key as we see a return to transit and transit users is community outreach. Well, the slide here depicts Constable Shiraz Hanif, who continues to provide talks and outreach to the Muslim community and works with the RCMP hate crimes team. We were also doing outreach in particular to the Asian community. We had seen in Vancouver in the local and in crime stats that Vancouver had seen as a region and an area one of the most significant increases in the number of what is described as hate crime or hate crime events towards the Asian community. And as we prepared for the return to transit, we spent a lot of time liaising with groups, whether they be from universities, organizations, and community groups, to assure them of our attention to preventing events from occurring and ensuring that if anything did occur, that it got reported to us. Part of that education and prevention aspects was through the use, as we have our members speak up to 36 different languages, was creating both written materials and providing presentations in the individual's, I would say, first language, which was very well received. Next slide. This doesn't mean that while we were doing all this outreach that I know people look at whether what was happening in around the system and that. Just as a general note, our calls, which have been maintained about the same or climbing again with an increase in the number of transit riders that our members do and are present there to address individuals who are acting in an inappropriate manner. And quite often they result in locating individuals who have warrants for their arrest. From Q1 to Q2, the members themselves made executed 648 arrest warrants, which is a 108% increase over last year for the same time frame from last year. So I'm not sure why there may have been a number of more warrants or if there's just the diligence and the members who are out there doing the job, but it does show the interaction with those individuals that are brought to our attention throughout the system. Next slide. I'm going to highlight two teams here just so you can create. The transit police have a specialized role within policing in the Lower Mainland. And we look at it now as we're finishing our strategic plan, and I'll comment that at the end, that we offer specialized policing, and we recognize that it goes just, what I say goes beyond just Skytrain. It includes watching for Coast Mountain Bus, C-Bus, West Coast Express, and ensuring those areas are kept safe as well. One of the teams we have created is called a Targeted Mobile Enforcement Team. This is a team of individuals who will target problem areas and issues, which will include areas where we may get information from Compass of people pushing through the gates at a given time or a high volume of push-throughs, complaints of STAs or that, noticing that possible fare infractions or fare payment isn't occurring. We also work to try and work with the Coast Mountain and the bus drivers in areas where there are dedicated bus lanes, dedicated areas that are not being respected by other vehicles. So we'll conduct enforcement, recognizing that the goal of keeping transit moving and on time becomes also an important aspect of it. This all police agencies works together with joint operations in doing enforcement activities, and it has helped us because it's also educated those agencies on the importance of some of this bus lane enforcement or even issues around distracted driving, around major hubs and terminus areas where drivers are waiting to pick up kids or pick up passengers who are coming off the system. Next slide. The next slide is the second team that has been created, of course, is that we do work with our local jurisdictional police agencies in that there has to be a role for the police to target people who are using the system to for criminal activity, whether it is just transporting themselves around the system or committing criminal acts on or near the system in relation to it, making transit safe, in our goal to make transit safe, not only on the system, but around the stations and major hubs in terms of it. As you can see, as you see in just a bit of a thing here, is that in 1 month, this team assisted with 51 files. They had made arrests, found weapons in terms of it, and provide assistance also on other more major significant events that may be occurring where our general investigation unit is involved. It has been successful in terms of helping also with the regional gang conflict, where we have a bit more of a focus on those of a younger age and youth, in the late youth, early teens, who are involved within the use of the transit system to become mobile throughout the region. Next slide. So just an update here that we are finally coming to an end of our strategic plan update. Again, want to thank each and every subsidiary, individual, community group in their submissions to us on the strategic plan. The police board has the final copy, other than some wordsmithing, and now to get to the document being produced, and it should be up for the prior to the end of the year. And highlights in the most recent report, include things that what we had done as safety protocols we've established due to the COVID-19 pandemic. There's actually a 5% increase in police files generated from text reports, and that's of interest because we're one of the only agencies that offers the texting to be able to text, and it's monitored 24 hours a day, and it continues to grow. We were able to launch a community policing center at the waterfront office during COVID and have upwards of 60 volunteers that are now engaged with us. And the piloting of a digital evidence management program that we know, being in the pilot, that the province will issue directive for this to be used as a common platform for all police agencies within the province of British Columbia. That is it. And Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you very much, Chief Jones, for that report. And I'm just looking to see if anyone has any questions for you. Yes, Andy, go ahead.
Yes, thanks for the report. I'm just wondering, given the media attention regarding the mask mandate, maybe you could just brief us on what your guys are seeing out on the line. We heard Kevin earlier on saying he sees high levels of mandatory mask wearing. What are you hearing out on the system?
Yeah, so thank you very much for the question. We do. We saw that in particular, even on the Skytrain system, that even when mask order was dropped temporarily, there was still over 90% wearing the mask. And out of that 10% that weren't wearing it, we didn't anticipate any big significant issues when the mask order came back on. There have been some highlighted occasions of people interacting with individuals who aren't wearing masks. I can say that we continue to say not to engage or get involved, but simply like using our text messaging system to allow us to intervene in what is happening. But it is an extremely high use of masks. And for the majority of people who don't have one, a reminder, and our members carry masks to, perhaps, put it on, you've got to do it. They become compliant. I would say that our issues become fraught with some individuals that we've become aware of or groups that just don't believe in the mask mandates or vaccines. And those are the individuals that require more of a direct enforcement activity, but they are fewer and fewer in terms of it. And again, I would just advise people, if they're listening here, is that you can text us, you can push buttons on a lot of the trains. The buses obviously have drivers involved, but let us deal with anyone if there's confrontation that's about to occur.
Yeah, I think it's an important message. We see the news headlines when, as you say, rare incidents occur. I just think we need to get that message out as we're encouraging people to get back to transit, to make sure that it is the safe, reliable transportation system they need. So thanks for the work you're doing. I hope we can keep on top of this and see our customers coming back and encourage to use transit again. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Andy. Harj?
Thank you, Tony. Chief, when we were talking about the opioid crisis and you were talking about how much it's increasing, I'm just wondering what are we working with other social agencies and other police forces around the region as well? And if so, how are we integrating with them?
So part of that, of course, is we're working with issues such as there are some government agencies that, of course, are lobbying for the decriminalization of drugs in terms of our safe supply mechanisms. So I would say that as a policing agency, we're in support of that. I mean, we go through these various agencies and would like to see an approach. I think it started with the City of Vancouver. We now hear the City of New Westminster and a couple others making the same call for it. We're also, again, connected into the using outreach to the various health networks and we call action teams, ACT teams, that deal with individuals in this form of crisis. So whether it be getting them in the use of safe injection sites or finding and be able to referring them to a medical facility or individual who may be able to provide some, I would say, counseling or assistance with their addiction issues. And I think the biggest approach there is we take it not as a criminal matter for these individuals who are addicted. It's a health issue, and it's trying to work within that. We ourselves are looking to try and partner with some of these health teams that have been created in the region in terms of it. And, you know, to see how we can, because we get such a breadth of people who move from one jurisdiction to the other, you know, using the transit system. And sometimes it's just to seek their supply of drugs, or sometimes they may be returning after finding it. So, and the other one is, of course, is there is always an enforcement angle, which is to ensure that individuals who are involved more at the higher levels of profiting or trafficking in the substance we work with the jurisdictions to interdict that, because we do have certain transit hubs in areas where, you know, if it would say the vulnerable sector, vulnerable individuals are located and can be found, and then you have others delivering this potency to them, right? So we need to find a way to intercede in that manner. But the issue is, and we all recognize it, is that the numbers on the opioid crisis are still going in the wrong direction as well, very much so.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Chief Jones. I don't see any other hands, so thank you for your report. And with that, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is going back to Mike McDaniel, who's our President, General Manager of Coast Mountain Bus Company. So Mike, we're hoping that the technical difficulties have been fixed, and I'll just turn it back to you.
Doesn't look like it's working, Tony.
Yeah, I don't see or hear.
Yeah, I can see him and he's not able to get his voice out, so.
Okay. Well, why don't we maybe move on to the next item on the agenda, and maybe we can circle back to Mike at the end just to see if he's maybe been able to fix his issues. So the next item on the agenda is just a verbal report from Sarah Clark, who's our chair of the Finance and Audit Committee. So Sarah, I'll turn it over to you. I don't see Sarah or hear her.
No, I'm here.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, can you see me now?
I can see you and hear you now. So yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay, I'm having trouble as well, but I'll just go ahead. So sorry, we met on September 13th, our committee, and covered a number of topics, including the 2022 investment plan and funding strategy. We also went through the update on the cybersecurity incident and the progress that has been made internally with the systems that were affected, and had a full information technology project update as well. We also cover in our meeting safety and the statistics, and we've heard a lot today from Skytrain as well as the transit police on their efforts for passenger and employee safety. And we improved a new health and safety policy for TransLink at our meeting. This is now we're heading into audit time. So we had the plan from our external auditor, which just to remind everybody is KPMG. So they presented their plan for the upcoming audit after year end. And internally, our internal audit and continuous improvement group reported on projects they have been working on, actions that have been assigned, progress on addressing actions in internal audit, as well as their improvement plan update. Heading into budget season, we had a report from Chris on how our financials to date, but as well as the key financial assumptions for the 2022 budget. And we conducted our annual review of accounting policies and financial reporting practices. In our consent agenda, we reviewed the progress of the Broadway subway project, the rail expansion program, as well as the public transit infrastructure fund program implementation and how far we have progressed on all of the projects with the funding that was received through that program.
Okay.
If you have any
great.
questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Don't see any questions for you, so we'll just move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a report from Larry Beasley, who's the chair of the Planning and Stakeholders Relations Committee. So Larry, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had our meeting on September the 14th with all of our committee members present. We also were very happy to have our new CEO, Kevin Quinn, attend our first board meeting, where he was able to tell us about the introduction of his children to Canadian society by their experience of meeting a couple of black bears. So that was an interesting moment to see how they're enjoying joining us in Canada. The second was we had a new committee member, at least she was on her way to being a new committee member. She is now a new committee member, and that's Andrea Reimer, who joined us as well for her first meeting with our committee. Much of our agenda was a lead up to today's agenda, things that were coming forward here to the main public board meeting. The first, of course, was an update on the 2050 planning process, and particularly the phase 3 of public engagement. Very, very excited to now be getting down to the details on this new visionary plan, which with some final inputs from us and also from the Mayor's Council, is now headed out for public engagement, public review. And I just want to emphasize, this is the moment for every citizen in this region to have a look at where this plan is going, what it's trying to say. I'm pleased to say it is coming forward as a very visionary plan, very cutting edge to the issues of the day, and we're feeling very good about that. And it will be quite a wide public engagement happening in the fall. The second was that we did provide comments into the Metro Vancouver, their 2050 regional plan, and we were so happy to see that the regional plan, land use plan, and the regional transportation plan are coming together so well, because we know that they just fit hand in glove together to create and shape the region that we have. We offered some comments, but because there's been so much liaison back and forth and integration, they were very relatively minor comments. These are two plans that are pretty much coming together very, very well. And then we also, as we are all doing in our committees, had our update on the ridership recovery, and particularly a good discussion about the recovery plan, the strategy to reach out to our customers, help them understand the system is very, very safe now again, and that there are many opportunities to rejoin us. And there's some pretty interesting and exciting things coming forward that our customers will start seeing in the fall. And then we dealt with a few other issues that are not on the agenda today. The first is that there is the beginning now of what's called the New Vision process, that we have our 10-year investment plan coming together next year. And a part of that is a mayor's vision, which the mayors many years ago decided was a good way to frame the particular investment approach. And so now that process is starting as a lead into the 10-year investment plan update. And what we looked at was the process itself, and also the assignment of people from the board and the Mayor's Council to assist, this being at the request of the Mayor's Council themselves. So that was a good kickstart to this very important planning aspect moving forward. We also discussed how the approved initiative for adding washrooms into our system would be integrated into the new 10-year investment plan. There are many options. There are, as everyone knows, there are many demands on the financing side moving forward, but we confirmed that the importance of the washrooms initiative and urged the team to think about how best to do that in a way that would not take away necessarily from other service improvements and other service delivery as well, and to find that balance. And then very importantly, and this is really to some degree an outcome of the Indigenous framework and reconciliation considerations, and perhaps important to highlight today with next week's holiday, is that we started the process to talk about adding services to the reserves in our region. One of the, what you might call the institutionalized discrimination of the past that we need to fix very quickly was that we don't provide full services not that we don't, but we actually we can't provide full services to our reserves. And we want now to address that. We know all the Indigenous nations with their engagement with us through the Indigenous Relations Committee and Initiative are saying to us that this is a priority. So that we discussed as well, and we felt very good that that is coming forward. Also, I would note that in the consent agenda, we dealt with things you might consider, but very importantly, we did deal with that Indigenous Relations quarterly report. This new initiative is taking a very significant place on our agenda. And I think we are feeling quite positive that we're going to see very, very important outcomes in the theme of reconciliation and partnership with the nations on which we share the occupancy of these lands. So that was our meeting. It was a very energetic meeting. It went from all morning, and we enjoyed it.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Larry, for that report. I don't see any questions, so we'll just move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a report from Marcella, who chairs the Human Resources and Governance Committee. So Marcella?
Thank you very much, Chair. The HR and governance meeting followed the energetic meeting, the planning and stakeholder meeting with a lot of the same people. So the energy just continued in the day. And I do want to add one other comment to our new CEO and his family coming here. It was not just the bears, it was also the reindeer that the children saw and insisted were not just plain old ordinary Vancouver deer, they were reindeer.
Yeah.
So well done. In our meeting, we covered a number of issues as always. One of our critical items that we look at is the report from our Vice President of Human Resources that covers a number of issues, and they are all under the strategic framework of building a strong foundation, putting people first, and investing in the future. And these are obviously very critical issues given COVID and other issues that we're facing today. Highlights of the report, which is very lengthy, but the ones that we thought were significant, among others, was, first of all, there were no significant changes in our enterprise workforce, despite everything that we all read and see around the exodus from the workforce due to COVID, working from home, people moving, changing the way they want to work. So we are very, very fortunate to, at this moment in time, and hopefully going forward, not seeing a large exodus. Another area we looked at is the job evaluation process within the organization. It is being updated. It has not been looked at for a long time, and it's not so much the actual salary ranges, but rather the process around what that evaluation process would look like and how it goes forward. We looked at education and training. Some of it has been suspended over the little while, largely due to the both the combination of COVID and our cyber attack that we had. So some are being offered, and most significantly, the team is working with a leadership program with the Sauder School of Business to be offered within the organization. And then finally, we spent some time looking at equity, diversity, and inclusion, and where our processes are in relationship to advancing those in the organization. And largely, we're in the place of building our capacity and understanding and identifying what our barriers are in the organization to moving forward. So it's really good to see progress on that. Finally, our recruitment. There's been recruitment. The numbers are not as large as they have been in the past, and most of it has been relating to operators, bus operators. We then turn to the future of work. What is going to happen at TransLink in terms of people returning to work, how, when, where. We discussed last time that it's a 3-phase approach, and the first phase has already been undertaken, which is starting with communication to managers and to employees, and to develop safety plans around the return to work. Everything that is being done in conjunction with, and certainly to meet provincial health orders and keeping people safe. Those are our primary concerns. We are also, the group is remaining as flexible as they possibly can as things change. One plan that may have been in place is going to be altered because of new surges in COVID or different places. So the good thing is that the team is very flexible, even though it has an ongoing plan. We then turn to governance reports. There's a number of governance reports that we look at on a regular basis. For instance, the privacy management program. We looked at we had a report on the screening panel, an update, and we looked at the chair nominating process. So these will be followed. There'll be further reports on these issues. We looked at our annual process for reviewing our own governance, how we perform as a board, and we agreed that we would continue with the process similar to the one that we had last year, and you will all be receiving that eventually to be filled in and returned. And then the last thing that we looked at was a follow-on actually to what the planning and stakeholder looked at, which is the new vision and investment plan process. We looked at it from a governance perspective, and you will be seeing that. Unlike the previous committee, we approved that for presentation to the board and endorsement. So with that, that is my report. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Marcella, for that report. I don't see any questions here. So again, thank you. So we're going to try once more to circle back to Mike and hope that we can have him fixed his technical challenges. So I'm not sure, Mike.
Tony, can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay.
I can hear you. Perfect. And you're coming through loud and clear. So that's great.
Nobody happier than me at this moment then. I want to assure the board that it was not my on-time performance, it was my reliability, just to use some transit terms there. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Mr. Quinn, and members of the public and staff that are actually hearing me now and watching this live. So next slide, please. So you have your agenda in front of you. I'm going to cover a couple of updates on COVID. On Handy Dart, I'll go into our performance area to talk about safety, operations, and our people, and then a final update on our Burrard Chinook, which of course you heard about a little bit earlier. Next slide, please. So first and foremost, we obviously have had some changes. You heard from Kevin earlier about the changes in the mask mandate. Of course, with running the bus fleet, we had a lot of signs to change very quickly, and our team jumped into that right away within minutes. What I can say, and I want to send out kudos to our team at Fleet Overhaul and a particular staff member at Fleet Overhaul who came up with quite a novel approach at how we could do this quicker, less cost and less waste. And they jumped into that right away and were able to, in a matter of a few days, get all of the signs changed, get the destination signs obviously updated on the front of the buses. And then, of course, just a week later, we ended up implementing a enterprise-wide policy out of obviously caution for safety and health of our staff, and required mandatory masks in all of our facilities as well on August 31st. We do continue to and will continue to encourage our employees and recommend to our employees to get vaccinated. We want to do our part in the community because we play a very large part in this community, and we will continue to do that. Next slide, please. So speaking of playing our part, again, you saw a little bit of this from Kevin earlier. This is one of our mobile vaccine buses. This is a partnership between TransLink, ourselves, and Fraser Health. You see a couple of our team there. And it is really to do this. It is playing our part in the community to contribute to the cause to get as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible. We've obviously, you see, we've stopped at a number of different locations, and we'll continue to help out where needed. Next slide, please. So just an update now on HandyDart. You saw some of the numbers a little while ago, specifically on HandyDart for ridership. In August, we've reached 59%. This has been, again, encouraging, and we've seen it build back over time with day programs opening up. We're now at 59%. We're using about 84% of the service hours. This is obviously offset because we are still trying to maximize as much distancing as we can, where we can, when we are delivering those trips. And then outside of ridership, we have our modernization projects that have a variety of parts to them, but Compass for HandyDart is one of them. It starts in about a week, and that will also bring in the age-based discounts that was approved, of course, by this board back a couple meetings ago. But we're very excited to bring that product into HandyDart and for our customers there. Another part of the modernization project is the registration changes. Now, those are obviously longer in planning horizon, not coming into effect until 2023. But obviously, we have a lot to do between now and then, lots more planning, lots more engagement with stakeholders, and we will do exactly that. And then just a note, First Transit was purchased. It changed ownership to EQT Infrastructure in July. We did not anticipate any service impacts, and we have not had any service impacts. And going forward, we feel that's going to be exactly what it is, but wanted to let the board know that there was an ownership change there for First Transit. And next slide, please. So here we dive a little bit more into some detail on our first performance slide. For safety, you have two charts in front of you. The left one is for pedestrian incidents. It is up to Q2, and it is a 5-year trend. What you'll see there is that the trend is downward and continually downward. We have a rate that is based on 1 million service hours, and at 5.8, you see an absolute number of 15. We have obviously a team in the background that looks into all these as they happen. What I can tell you about those 15 is that in looking into it, we've had 2 out of those 15 that were actually discovered to have no bus contact. We've had 7 that we were not able to gain information on. There wasn't video footage. There wasn't stuff to verify that those happened. And then there were 6 that were verified. And of those 6, 5 were ruled internally by our team as preventable, 1 is non-preventable. The reason why I'm telling you the details, I want to give you an idea that in the background of all of these stats that we talk about each month is a lot of work that our teams do. And these teams will look at everyone individually. They'll look at root causes. They'll look at contributing factors, and they will look to mitigate all of those. And they come in many different categories, but there's a lot of work on the back end that our team is doing. So that's for pedestrian incidents. The chart on the right is for cyclist incidents. Same aspect here. We've got 5-year trend up to Q2. The denominator on this one as well is 1 million service hours. And you can see the rate falling. You can also see the absolute number falling. What I can tell you about these, besides we do the same thing with these incidents as with the pedestrian incidents, we had 4 out of the 5 in the city of Vancouver, 1 in the city of Richmond. We will continue to look at these and do all that we can to prevent them and to reduce them as we go forward in the future. Next slide, please. So speaking of what we do to prevent them, we have our refresher training. I've brought the board up to speed on this a couple of times, but it's obviously really taking shape now. It is a program, it's a 1-day refresher training program that focuses on 4 primary areas: violent incident prevention, safe driving skills, customer service, and of course, a driving skills assessment. What you see in the chart at the bottom is that we are well ahead of schedule. Originally planned, we had just shy of 800 that we're going to go through in 2021. We're now anticipating about 1,300 to go through in 2021, mostly driven by the fact that we've pivoted our instructors from new operator training demand that is lower over to this program, and we've been able to put more people through. It's been very well received by our operators. And instead of about a 1 in 5-year rotation that we targeted originally, it's about a 1 3-year rotation. So we're getting people refreshed in their training quicker, and that's a good thing. And just one last note here for the bus simulator, which I know some of you are more familiar with. We are just putting the finishing touches on getting a double-decker module for that. And so that'll be another tool in our toolkit to help our operators that are driving the double-deckers to get the skills that they need to do that and refresh those skills as well. Next slide, please. So this slide here, unfortunate circumstances, of course, we all know through the summer, there was a lot of wildfires throughout British Columbia, primarily in the interior of BC. And on August 18th, there was an evacuation of 101 seniors that were displaced. They were flown from Kelowna to YVR, a very unfortunate circumstance. However, they were met with our team, and our team, with hours of notice, put in plan a place for our transit supervisors, our transit security, transit operators, our special events team to get ready. And along with our Handy Dart team, they were all met. All 101 seniors were met by our staff, and they were transported directly to local care homes. So kudos to our team for stepping up. Our team does this sort of thing very well, and we do help out in these types of situations. I think this is a bit of a unique one that we've had, but our team excels at running the system that we know today that is running as we're in this meeting. And then some sort of audible is called and we need to do something different. Our team is very, very good at pivoting very quickly and in a planned way. So kudos to our team for getting all of the details done and helping out under these unfortunate circumstances. Next slide, please. And this will be the last update that I bring to the board on the Burrard Chinook. Obviously, we had a great day on July 22nd. You can see the picture on the screen. The Burrard Chinook ushered in with help from our partners at Vancouver Fire and Rescue and the water archway that they provided. You can see in the image as well, this is the first vessel that we have ever done an art installation on, and 3 local Indigenous artists came together and really did such a magnificent piece of art. It was wrapped on the Burrard Chinook, and it's quite a unique spectacle as it goes across from North Vancouver to Vancouver every day. I should, of course, note our crew that you see on the picture there. They were the ones that crewed that day, and they were very proud to be part of that maiden voyage. On September 6th, we of course did move back to 10-minute peak service, and with all of the numbers that Mr. Quinn talked about earlier on, we're ready for that continuous build as we go forward, and the capacity is there for our customers to come and enjoy a trip across the water. And next slide, please. So just completing, again, a welcome to Kevin. As he said, he has been around, but I will say all of the first areas that he came around was with the bus company. That was a little bit of a scheduling thing for us and an opportunity. Spent a lot of mornings and a lot of later nights with Kevin and introducing him to the CNBC team, the CNBC facilities, and it's been fantastic to just immerse you, Kevin, into what we're doing, and it's been great conversation so far. Look forward to more in the future, and I absolutely know we will have a lot more in the future. So welcome aboard. No pun intended to the C-bus picture there, but welcome aboard. And Mr. Chair, that ends my presentation. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike. Andy?
Yeah, thanks for the report, Mike. Glad you could join us. Just before I ask my question, I just have to say, when you get the double-decker simulator, please make sure I'm there when Larry gets to drive. I've got to watch that again. But my question goes to something that was introduced on September 1st, where we brought in the free transit for children under 12. And well, I realize we're only 3 weeks into it and it may be anecdotal, but could you just give us some idea of the kind of response from both passengers and employees to how that's been rolled out?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. And of course I will. When I was noting the double-decker module, I almost expected that somebody would make a comment on that. So yes, of course I will let you know when Larry is up to practice. So in regards to the under 12, and just to clarify for how it operationalizes with the bus company, is 12 and under do not actually need to be accompanied by a paying customer. So a little bit different than the Fairgate system for Skytrain, West Coast, and C-Bus. At this point in time, Andy, there hasn't been a lot of usage, or I guess I would say a lot of challenges to that. Obviously, our staff have been well informed. They know that that system has come into effect at the beginning of September. We do anticipate some translational issues, some information issues for who is riding with whom. We haven't had a lot as of yet. And with a lot of programs like this, it does take a little while for it to take shape. So I do imagine that we will have to stay on it and keep our staff informed and our customers informed as well on how to use the system in this way. So far, so good.
Great, thanks, Mike.
Great. Thanks, Andy. Marcella?
Well, thank you, Chair. Thanks for your report, Mike. And I just want to say how thrilled I am to see that wondrous, truly splendid C-Bus operating every day out there. So thanks for getting it floating. It looks beautiful. A couple of questions. In your stats on injuries, do they include the blue bus in West Vancouver?
For the pedestrian incidents?
Yes.
Or for the pedestrian?
Yeah. Pedestrian and cyclist incidents.
For those incidents, they don't actually include contracted service. So West Vancouver Blue Bus, and then Langley Shuttle, and Bowen Island Shuttle.
Okay, thank you. Are those, so presumably to get those statistics, you go to those entities to find stats. Okay, thanks very much.
Correct, yes.
A second question is one, under your environmental section, you talk about a lot of excellent actions. I just have a question as to whether or not you have ever contemplated solar energy.
Yeah, we do. We have and we do. As part of our low carbon fleet strategy, what we're looking at as we build out that strategy in the planning phase, what we're looking at is how we become most efficient. Right now, the supply from BC Hydro is about 94-95% clean energy that they're getting, and it would compel us that solar might not be needed for that. That said, there are a lot of logistics to implementing our low carbon fleet strategy. Things like redundancy of power, things like where our charging stations are. Some will be in our depots on land we own, some will be in municipalities on land we don't own and don't have as much control over. So what we're looking at from either solar or wind or any other energy producing option is how those might help us mitigate some of our inherent risks in having a fuel type of electricity for the propulsion of our vehicles as we go forward. So what I will say is we are looking at it. There are challenges to it, but there's going to be challenges to implementing the strategy going forward. And solar and others may be solutions to that. I think as we get a little bit more into it, you obviously heard Kevin mention the 15 buses that are coming in for the 100 route. We do have many more planned actually over the next about 3 to 5 years. And a lot of that planning will take shape. We'll be able to play that back to the board and the public as we get into that a little bit more, but we are on it. We are watching it very closely. Thanks, Marcella.
Great, thank you, Marcella. Larry?
Yes, Mike, thank you for your report. I wanted to really emphasize the introduction of children 12 and under riding free. I had a testimonial from one of our customers who saw a 10-year-old child on the route out to UBC come onto the bus. And the person was very impressed at how the driver really took a lot of extra care and attention to make the young person, the 10-year-old boy, feel comfortable. She, made sure he had a good place to sit, made sure she could see him. She was very attentive. And I must say that this particular customer then said that he was feeling better about the whole idea, where he had been a bit worried that obviously this driver, and maybe that means all drivers, paying attention and really trying to make this work well. Did you do a special orientation to your drivers in this regard, or was that just a one-time thing?
No, and thanks, Larry. And I'll first of all pass that along. We do hope that the far majority of interactions that our customers are having with all of our staff are exactly as you described. We know that the far majority are. In regards to getting ready for kids 12 and under being on transit for free, we did a myriad of things to educate our team, to update our team, to inform our team, to talk through those issues around is somebody really 12 and under, all the way to a little bit of the situation you just described, which is, and make sure that when they come on, that they're situated okay, because they may obviously be riding alone, they may be a little bit younger. And so there's all those aspects. So yes, we did it in an extensive communications campaign with our staff. So I don't think the results you're describing are by accident, but they're definitely well received, and I will pass them along. Thank you.
Well, apparently the young fellow almost visually became more comfortable. It may have been an early trip on his part, but he became much more comfortable. So whoever that driver was, we should give her great kudos and kudos generally for making this seamless. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you, Larry. Lorraine?
Thank you, Chair. And Mike, thank you for your report. I have a few kind of comments and questions. One is about I guess I wanted to just comment about the staff person that came up with the idea about how to deal with the mask signage. I think it's an example of where Kevin referred to before, where we wanted to be more nimble. I think the best ideas come from inside the organization and not from somebody else that's supposed to be thinking about it. So, and I suspect that over time we will be going from mask mandatory to mask recommended a few more times in our COVID world here. So I just want to say how encouraging that is to hear that you were able to do that and respond so quickly. You were talking about some of your stats, and I know one of our callers called in before and talked about how we weren't able to post these things, or we hadn't been posting them online. And I guess I was reminded about the cyber attack, which for us, many of us are thinking, oh, this is way in the background, but I know it's still impacting your life. And I'm just curious about where you see that going and how your stats are slowly starting to come back online, and when you're going to be able to post some of those things for our customers to see.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, thanks, Lorraine. And so on the first topic, not only did yes, many of our bright ideas come from our staff that are on the ground, that are in the work, right? They're in the work and they know what's wrong and they know how to fix it. And we have a variety of means to try to intake that information. Our Bright Ideas program. We have cards that staff can fill out every day. And then we have, of course, situational things that arise like this signage. And there's two great parts about what that staff member did. Is one, they solved a problem for us in the immediate, and they also anticipated solving the next problem, which you mentioned, which is at some point in time, we hope we will be moving back to masks recommended, and the solution that they came up with actually makes that an efficient process as well, and back and forth if we need to. So yeah, kudos there. In regards to the stats, yes, we have had some stats given the cyber incident that have been down. Many of them are back up. Many of them are coming, not all, but many of them are coming into the day-to-day operation for all of us across the enterprise. The accountability center on the TransLink website is a little bit of a different question, and that's probably something to leave with the TransLink team, because, and I'm sure they've noted it given the comments of the speaker that spoke to that. But we will take that under advisement and try to get more information for our customers on the website. We're almost there from what I understand from my standpoint, and I hope we are on the other side with the TransLink team as well. I suspect we are, but I won't comment for them.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, I just want to say that I think the C-Bus is beautiful, and I suggest when we have money, that we should wrap the other 2 C buses as well. So that's just a suggestion for you to add to your hopper of when you have money.
Well, Lorraine, we actually have 3 other C buses. But I think it's a great idea. And we have already had conversations about how nice one looks and how the others don't quite fit the bill. So we'll take that under advisement. And it looks like there aren't many other questions. I apologize for the suspense that I created by bringing my report with no audio. So apologies for that, but happy to join everybody today.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike. I'm glad you were able to make it and provide your report. So we really appreciate. So that I think is the end of the questions. So we're going to move to the next item on the agenda, which is a report on the Regional Growth Strategy, or Metro 2050. And earlier you heard from Larry Beasley, who's our chair of our planning committee. And Larry often makes this statement, which he didn't make in his update, but I'll repeat it now. He often says that the best transportation plan is a good land use plan. And I think in his report, Larry mentioned how both us and Metro Vancouver have been really working closely and in collaboration with respect to Transport 2050 and Metro 2050. And so we really appreciate the good working relationship that we have on both those documents, both very important processes. In terms of Metro 2050, TransLink is considered an effective local government with respect to the growth strategy. And so the TransLink board will be asked to approve the regional growth strategy. So we thought it was important that we have staff from Metro Vancouver come and give us a bit of an update on that and give the board an opportunity to ask any questions that they may have. So with us today are Heather McNeil, who's the General Manager of Regional Planning and Housing Services, and Sean Galloway, who's the Director of Regional Planning and Electoral Area Services. So Heather, I'm going to turn it over to you now. Welcome to the TransLink Public Board meeting.
And thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate that. And thanks for the opportunity this morning to present Metro 2050, the draft update to the Regional Growth Strategy. If it's okay with you, I'd like to start by respectfully acknowledging that our region's residents live, work, and learn on the shared territories of many Indigenous peoples, including 10 local First Nations: Katzie, Kwantlen, Coquitlam, Matsqui, Musqueam, Kakite, Semiahmoo, Squamish, Tawasin, and Tsleil-Waututh. As noted, my name is Heather McNeil, and I'm joining you today in my role as General Manager of Regional Planning and Housing Services at Metro Vancouver. I don't think it's a surprise that we're all very blessed to live in a region that is as beautiful as it is abundant. And as a region, we are very lucky to enjoy healthy ecosystems, a vibrant economy, and a whole host of strong and resilient communities. And we all really contribute to making this region strong. Some of our communities are home to our drinking water reservoirs, some are hosting our industrial lands and business districts, and others still support the bulk of our agricultural land and the food security that represents. And all of our communities are great places to call home. We've also benefited from the thoughtful and sometimes difficult choices made by previous decision makers and leaders, and they've made wise long-range planning decisions like protecting our conservation areas, our agricultural land, and investing in public transit when cities across North America were actually building highways. Their forethought and earlier regional plans really have helped us set us up for success. And of course, the inextricable connection that the chair just mentioned in terms of between land use and transportation planning means that Metro Vancouver and TransLink and Metro 2050 and Transport 2050 must not just be complementary, they have to be fully integrated. And our challenges here are many. We have a limited land base, we have high housing prices, we have rapid population growth, and we all know we need to do better to make sure that all people in our region are thriving regardless of their age, their background, or income. And climate change is undoubtedly the biggest challenge of our time. However, as we look forward to the year 2050, I hope you can share my optimism that if we continue to work together, we can shape a really incredible community and region, equitable and prosperous and resilient for the benefit of our children and grandchildren. We've been starting a road trip out to every municipal council in the region, this morning to the TransLink board, and also to adjacent regional district boards with this presentation. And part of the reason that we're here today is to emphasize to you how important this 80-page document is to everything we do at Metro Vancouver. How we plan for projected growth and land use in this region has a massive impact, whether for better or for worse, on our other responsibilities as local governments, including the regional utilities and services that are provided by Metro Vancouver. If we choose a sprawling development pattern, we also choose to spend more down the road on expanding and maintaining infrastructure and transportation and transit systems. Simply put, if we spread the population too thin, we also have to spread our capital and operating budgets thin. We end up with miles of pipes and roads that are expensive to maintain. Choosing to build compact, complete communities means keeping our costs low, but also protecting what we value, whether that's our industrial capacity, our sensitive natural areas, or our food-producing lands. And this compact development also contributes to our region's resilience. And these past 2 years have highlighted the importance of planning for a resilient region. The challenges of COVID-19 have taught us the essential value of protecting our parkland and making sure that we expand it to meet the growing popularity of being nature. And TransLink's role in terms of access to that green space is critical. And our experience this summer with extreme heat, drought, and rampant wildfires demonstrate that climate action and planning for resilience cannot be delayed. My hope is that these are the principles you'll see shine through on every page of Metro 2050. I want to extend my gratitude to you and to TransLink staff for all of the contributions so far in helping draft this content. This is our shared plan, as noted, and we can't get it over the finish line without your help. We're really looking forward to the dialogue and questions this morning, and I'm going to pass it over to Sean to walk through some of the content in the draft of the plan. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Heather, and thank you to the chair and the members of the board for having us today. If I could get to the next slide. And so the intent of today is to give you a general overview of Metro 2050 and the ability to provide further comment as we go through our process, ultimately getting to final adoption. Next slide, please. So this is a long-range plan for the region. It's a set of goals and aspirations and a vision that is our regional federation that we agree are regional matters. And much of what is in the document is defined under the Local Government Act. And through that process, we're hoping to build a sustainable future. We have a long and proud history of regional planning within Metro Vancouver, as you can see on the slide. And the current plan, as many of you know, is Metro 2040, and it was adopted in 2011. And as part of its adoption, all local governments, and including TransLink, as was noted earlier, are signatories to the plan. Next slide. So the scope of the update in terms of Metro 2040, it has served our region well. And what is being proposed is not a new plan. This is to look at an update, what has happened over the last 10 years since 2011, where have we fallen short? And of course, 2011 was, 2011 was a different time to 2021. And some of the issues that we face today were not as impactful then as they are now. And so we're looking to take a look at those and how we can integrate them into the plan and respond to the challenges. Next slide. And as Heather noted, I want to thank TransLink staff. Been grateful for their involvement to date in the plan, and the plan has responded to many of their comments, and there's still obviously more work to be done. But the engagement process has been robust. It started 2.5 years ago. And we've been working with TransLink and member jurisdictions, adjacent agencies, and other regional agencies to where we've produced the draft to date that is now out for comment. Next slide. So as I noted, it builds on Metro 2040, and we have taken through our Intergovernmental Advisory Committee, which TransLink has representatives on. We've taken the comments from both TransLink and the member jurisdictions, First Nations and others, and integrated them into the plan and into the draft that you now see before you. And of course, we want to continue to work and work through those policy elements and build on them to where we can get to the final draft that involves the signatories, of which TransLink is one. Next slide. So our region, in terms of our projections, and these are not targets, you'll hear me say that a lot, that they're not targets, but we are working on a projection of 1 million people moving to the region by 2050. 500,000 new homes and 500,000 new jobs will come to our region over the next 30-ish years. And we have built in a 15% allowance on that in terms of those projections. Next slide. The new plan remains at 5 goals. We've consolidated one goal, but created a new goal around providing diverse and affordable housing, which you see as number 4. And that is in response to issues that have come up over the last 10 years and needing a more enhanced policy framework to assist with activities across the region. Next slide. So, sorry, this one's going to need to be advanced. If you can advance to the first point. Thank you. So in terms of what's being proposed in the new plan, there has been questions across from member jurisdictions and other agencies around the clarity on urban centers and frequent transit development areas. For many, some of the classifications like the municipal town center straddle across a diverse set of urban centers like Ladner and also Oak Ridge are classified as the same, but as you can imagine, they're very different places. And so we've attempted to create small augmentation to the classifications to reflect the local context. Next point. One of the stronger alignments is around trying to direct planned growth with transit investment. And one of the new tools that is being suggested or proposed is the major transit growth corridors. This is the attempt to align with the new major transit network that is in the transportation or Transport 2050 strategy to date that's gone out in engagement. And so we're hoping by way of aligning those two pieces, we can better direct growth to the urban centers and the major transit growth corridors to support those investments that we're making across the region. Next. And on the housing front, we've put in a target, and I think one of the important pieces about targets in the regional growth strategy that needs to be remembered is that these targets have to apply to everybody. So this 15% target equally applies to Maple Ridge as it does to downtown Vancouver or Vancouver. And so this is not that everybody has to achieve the 15%. This is a regional target. Some may not entirely achieve the 15% due to market dynamics and other such measures, where others may go way over the 15%. And this is in an effort to get a policy in there that begins to develop a foundation, but can be equally helpful to everybody as we begin to try to implement further the ability of affordable housing close to transit. Next slide. Policies, again, to encourage transit-oriented affordable housing. This is an important piece, and we want to continue to work through those with the member jurisdictions who deal with development applications and are largely the implementers of much of these policies, and wanting to support those activities at the local level. Next slide. Industrial lands is an important piece of the puzzle across the region, and trying to maintain them and protect them to support employment activities. Now, as part of the plan, we're also looking at increasing flexibility near rapid transit stations, particularly employment areas with a 200-meter circumference, and the opportunity to integrate a mixed-use opportunity with employment at the ground floor and possibly residential above. Next point. Again, working through with stronger climate action. This was not as impactful at the time of adoption in 2011, certainly was in its infancy in terms of as an issue. Obviously in 2021, much greater. And so we're looking to add policies and further strengthen the foundation that we have in the plan to deal with climate action. Next. One of the other important bits around climate action is initial target here of looking for 50% of the land within the region to be for nature and 40% tree canopy cover. And like the 15% housing target, again, this has to be extrapolated across the region, and not everyone is going to achieve all of these targets. Some will achieve more, some will achieve less, but overall in the region, we're making that achievement, which is the important piece. Next point. Again, we've taken an initial step in the plan around equity outcomes. There's much more work to do on that, and we're looking to build a stronger policy framework for those pieces. Next point, along with First Nations, and we've been working very hard with the First Nations community to continue to integrate appropriate policies that can support their activities. And we have built some working groups with them, and we are continuing to work through engagement, and they're part of the advisory committee, the Intergovernmental Advisory Committee, and providing feedback through this process. Next point. And the last one, which we really continue to harp on, is that these are regional targets, and they need to be, we need to think of them relative to the local context, because not all local contexts are equal across the region. Next slide. In terms of integrating Metro 2050 and Transport 2050, the 4 key areas that you see on the slide, the MTGCs, I'm sorry for the acronym, but the major transit growth corridors are being one of the key components of aligning transit investment with growth locations. Again, taking the first stab at a target of affordable housing near transit is an important step in number 2, and continuing to work with TransLink around climate action and the protection of goods movements and corridors and industrial lands to ensure that we have that balanced land use across the region to support both the economic and residential activities of our region. Next slide. And so, as you can see, the major transit growth corridors and major transit network map are in full alignment. We continue to work with TransLink staff as changes come to those alignments as we get closer towards the final drafts of our respective plans. And so we continue to do that through the Intergovernmental Advisory Committee and one-on-one meetings. And we look forward to continuing that alignment, as both of these will be important tools to consolidate transit investment and growth over time. Next slide. In addition, we are also including maps within the regional growth strategy around the regional greenway network and the major bikeway network, and we continue to work with regional parks, regional planning, and TransLink to ensure there's alignment across the region to support both of these activities. Next slide. In terms of opportunities for engagement, again, we'll continue working with TransLink staff by way of the Intergovernmental Advisory Committee, along with other meetings with the province and through the Transport 2050 process. And we are looking for comments to come back by way of your board and of the municipal councils by November 26th. And there's many opportunities to provide feedback, and we want to continue working together to ensure alignment of both plans. Next slide. In terms of engagement, we continue, as we're doing here today, meeting with boards and councils and other groups. We're holding a public webinar. We're continuing on social media. The big piece is the Intergovernmental Advisory Committee. We have another meeting in October of that committee to begin to assess what we're hearing, what's happening within the local jurisdictions and other agencies and boards as we continue forward to see the comments and work through any issues that might result from the comments. Next slide. And in terms of next steps, so as I note, we're in the comment period. The draft of this plan was released in July, and November 26th, as noted on the previous slide, is when we're hoping to end the comment period. And then in December, we'll assess, based on the comments that we've received, whether there's a lot more work to go in terms of getting the plan to the right state, or can we move forward with the first bylaw reading in January, public hearing, and ultimately signatory adoption and final adoption coming in July. The board of Metro Vancouver has directed us to at this point to ensure that we get this process completed before the next election cycle. And that's what we're striving for currently. But certainly, once we hear back from the comments, that'll be a time to reassess and see if that schedule is still achievable, given the work that may still need to be done. And I believe that is the last slide.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Sean, and thank you, Heather, for your presentation. I'll now turn to questions from the board. Larry?
Thanks very much, Heather and Sean. I really congratulate you on a very forward-looking, state-of-the-art plan. You can imagine I've seen hundreds of these plans in my life. I've been tracking this one, and it's just getting better and better, and very much two things that I admire. One is it's very contemporary to the issues of the day, but I'm also very glad that it is bringing forward and fully realizing that incredible vision that was first stated in the 70s for our region, and that is coming together. And I think it's partly very much because of this plan. I have two comments and one question. My first comment is that I'm really glad to see a more sophisticated view of the relationship between saving industrial lands and enhancing transit and creating 15-minute neighborhoods. The idea that even in industrial lands where we have transit stations, we do need mixed use, we do need intensity, we do need to achieve the industrial base, but we also need to add the other components that facilitate active transportation, facilitate high transit use. And I'm glad to see that in here, and I would even urge even more consideration of possibilities there as you go through this next level of engagement. Secondly, I wanted to just say that I was really glad to see the explicit affordable housing targets, and I understand what Sean was saying about the delivery being different across the region. But one thing I'm hoping you will inquire about as you go in this last phase is whether or not we might be able to make those targets just a little higher. That in fact, we know affordability is probably the single largest issue hitting our region. And maybe all of us at every level need to aspire more to new ideas for affordability, which could come out of your policy framework. So perhaps you will consider when you're talking to all the constituents, whether or not there's a possibility to make those that target, I know you're not calling it a target, but that aspiration higher. And my third thing is more of a question. I read very recently, a commentator that was saying that TransLink's plan and transit was really just enhancing sprawl in this region. And it worried me when I read that, because I have a feeling the commentator had not seen your metro plan, because it does seem to me that your metro plan, along with TransLink's plan, is doing the very opposite. Yes, it has to accommodate growth, but it is doing that by channeling development into the right places, by creating clustering of development, and by creating development that's really helping to continue to save the natural spaces and the agricultural spaces. I suspect you've also heard that recent comment that was made. I'd just like to get a sense of your take on that, and where in the plan are you going to make sure that transit doesn't just add to sprawl, but in fact accommodates growth within an intelligent clustering and saving, what did you say, 50% of our land base for natural and agricultural areas?
Thanks so much for the question. And through the chair, maybe I'll start and Sean can jump in. Just a quick comment on the industrial piece. I think that was a long-standing challenge around creating the right level of flexibility on employment lands, and recognizing that not all employment lands are created the same. And so large, flat places next to the goods movement network are really different than places next to rapid transit. So we're happy to hear that's landing well and nuancing that. In terms of the argument about enhancing sprawl, it's one that we do hear. And I think you're right. I mean, it's really about not having understood that our urban containment boundary still contains a lot of greenfield areas and areas that are not well served by transit as of yet. And so Metro 2040 has a target to ensure that 98% of growth happens within the urban containment boundary. And we've been successful in 10 years of implementation with that. Now, we can't claim that it's a regional plan. We're also very lucky to benefit from an ALR, Agricultural Land Reserve, that sets that containment. But we also had other targets in 2011 in the Metro 2040 plan. One was to achieve 40% of our housing growth and 50% of our employment growth to good urban centers, and an additional 27% and 28% to areas along the frequent transit network. And we've done really well on the residential side. We haven't done as well on the job side. And so we definitely need to continue that work. But I would just say that, yes, I mean, this is recognizing that when we extend Skytrain out to Langley, for example, this is not enhancing sprawl. This is connecting existing urban centers, and this is creating good locations for growth within the urban containment boundary.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that comment.
Great. Thank you, Larry. I don't see any other hands, Heather, or in terms of questions for you, Heather or Sean, but I just want to say thank you very much for coming today and making this presentation. But as a board, we also appreciate the close working relationship that Metro Vancouver has with the TransLink staff. And I think that working relationship has been reflected, obviously, in both the Metro 2050 and the Transport 2050 plans. And as a board, I think we're pretty comfortable with where both plans are today. And I think hopefully what we can say at the end of the day, that the best transportation plan is a good land use plan, and that we've met Larry's test in terms of how we've embarked on both these processes. So again, thank you very much for coming today. And with that, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is to get a report from Steve in terms of our 2050 engagement for phase 3. So Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Chair. And I'll be fairly brief on this. It's just a verbal report, but I wanted to give the board and members of the public who are watching just a quick update on what our plans are for engaging on the third and final phase of our T2050 regional transportation strategy. As you all know, we've been at this for a while now. Our 30-year regional transportation strategy has actually been the largest public engagement in TransLink history. And since the process started in 2019, we've received more than 40,000 ideas and thoughts from the public for how to manage and improve the transportation system for the next several decades in our region. So really great engagement that we've received and really great input. We've been working really hard to prepare a final report and final recommendations and final strategy, and we're now approaching that final phase where we want the public to have an opportunity to provide feedback on that final draft. That opportunity will include opportunity to give us feedback on the overall plan and strategy, or really dive into each of the draft strategies that we're putting forward, including talking about convenient choices, reliable choices, affordable choices, safe and comfortable choices, and also carbon-free choices for residents of our region. Our engagement process will involve significant outreach to young people around the region, new Canadians, individuals who speak English as a second language. We will, of course, reach out to every single community in this region, and also communities that are neighboring this region, the Sea to Sky Corridor and the Fraser Valley as well. We will have online opportunities to participate, public webinars to dive into some details and get a facilitated Q&A if people are interested in participating in that. We'll have opportunities for key stakeholder groups ranging from various business associations, community associations, environmental groups, to drivers in the region, people who depend on their vehicles in the region, and many other stakeholders as well. So the dates that are really relevant for everybody to note is that this final engagement will take place from October 12th to October 29th. So October 12th to October 29th, we'll be out there publicly, highly visibly, trying to get people to participate in this final phase. And then the expectation is that we will be seeking final approval from the Mayor's Council in January. So back to you, Chair.
Great, thank you, Steve. That seems like a pretty proactive program, pretty comprehensive. And I think Andy has a question for you.
Yeah, thanks for the update, Steve. I just want to make a couple of comments here. Hearing both Metro and Transport 2050 back to back, those of the work inside of it realize what a huge undertaking this is. And, you know, as to Larry's comments, where people pick aspects up and maybe get off on a tangent and maybe don't analyze exactly what's going on, is so important. And I'm really encouraged with the engagement that's happened so far and going forward on a couple of aspects that I'll touch on, as well as others that I won't. But hitting our core customers, how we're serving them and continue to serving them. And what I'm really pleased to hear is, as we're talking to the youth who are going to be our future customers, both in our hopefully growth and changing transit patterns, but also those that rely on it as their core transportation network is so important. And I'd just like to compliment you and your team that have managed to deliver this epic consultation during a pandemic. In the best of times, it would be a huge undertaking. And just kudos to you and your team for delivering, and thanks for your work.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Andy. Sarah?
Thank you. I just wanted to build on that, as going back to Larry's comment around the land use. And Steve, there's a lot of people that when they see TransLink and Transport 2050 think that has nothing to do with me because I live in a region or I live in an area that, you know, it isn't served, or I have a job that I don't use transit. So how will we capture more people that aren't regular users and that could become regular users or will be affected by the land use changes to participate in this?
Well, first of all, I think it's really great question. I think it's really important for people to understand that this isn't just about transit. This is about every mode of transportation that you can imagine getting around this region. That includes e-scooters, cycling, walking, and it also includes using personal vehicles. It includes using our handy dart services, our commuter rail services, you name it. It involves every possible way of getting around. And this has been extensive research that has been done by our great group of planners and the experts that they've consulted with to study all of the options we have to encourage those choices that I was talking about. How do we make it convenient for people to use the many ways of moving around the region? How do we encourage people to use ways that are carbon free? As people increasingly want to use those ways that are carbon free, and so on. So we've really done an extensive job of looking at all of those options and really identifying where the public wants us to take the transportation going forward. What do they want us to prioritize? How do they want us to organize the systems that are out there? And the message is clear that people want to have that kind of accessibility to a transit system that works, and accessibility to multimodal means of transportation. And yes, that means that ultimately we do need to make sure that we are aligned with Metro Vancouver's plans for regional growth. And there has been a lot of work done with Metro Vancouver. I know Jeff Cross is on the call here as well, and he and his team have done extensive work with Metro Vancouver to make sure that we are kind of moving in conjunction with the region on its growth plans, and then we have a transportation system that supports their growth plans. So Sarah, I don't know if I've totally answered your question, but that kind of gives you a sense of where our thinking has been taking us.
I'm just wondering how, in raw numbers, maybe I missed this. Did you say how many people you'd like to reach in this phase?
I don't have a target in particular. We had more than 5,000 responses in this last summer when we were just doing this all online. So, you know, we'd certainly like to have far more than that in this final phase.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Marcella?
Thank you, Chair. I would just repeat what Andy has said. This is epic. It's an epic engagement, epic work, both on the part of TransLink and on the part of the city and the working together. So I just want to acknowledge that. My question is sort of a twist on Sarah's, and that is around how do you deal with, or how do you avoid, or do you think there is engagement fatigue? You know, people have been engaging with the city's plan, our planning process. How do you get back to people to say, okay, just one more time, give us your views one more time? We've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, no, again, really valid question. And we started, if you'll recall, when we started this whole process, we decided initially that we would really focus on creating awareness. And to create awareness, you have to be engaging. You have to be interesting. You have to be fun. So we did a lot of elements. You see a photo right here in front of us of the virtual reality element of our P&E exhibition and our P&E display, which was a couple summers ago now. So that was our first attempt to get people interested in the topic. But then the follow-up, you're right. I mean, it's challenging to get people to be that engaged all along. So a couple things, you have to keep it simple for the vast majority of the public. You have to keep the ask and the ability to participate really clear and very simple, and also give opportunities for people that want to dive into it more deeply. You know, not everybody learns the same way. We get that. So we have to provide a number of different ways for people to get engaged, whether it's in online forums or facilitated webinars. We have to provide information in several languages. We have to reach out to groups like youth groups or groups of new Canadians who traditionally may have a harder time learning about these opportunities. So there's no one simple answer to it. We'll try a number of these methods of trying to get engagement, but keeping it simple for the people that just want to have a quick and easy way to express their thoughts, and also giving opportunities for deeper dives.
I assume you're going to be reaching out like you did before through Instagram and all that sort of digital media.
We'll have a full suite of social media marketing and awareness campaigns.
Thanks, Steve. And I just want to correct myself, was pointed, I referred to the city's plan. It is not what I meant. I meant the region's plan, Metro's plan. So thanks for that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Marcella. Karen?
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Steve, for your report. Steve, I think you probably have covered this before, but when I look at your stakeholders for outreach and I think about the changes in the work environment going forward and some of the things we've looked at more strategically for the future, are we anticipating a change in the way that you interface with businesses? Thinking in particular about those businesses that are fairly substantial employers that might be moving to hybrid or at least partial work from home and I realize this is 2050, but I'm thinking that technology is probably going to play a bigger part going forward. Just wondered if your engagement with business has changed at all for the upcoming piece.
Not so much for this piece. I will say, though, interestingly, that we have been engaging with major employers throughout the region for most of the last 18 months, but especially over the last since the beginning of this year, as we've anticipated people coming back to the system. So we've been holding webinars and briefings with major employers throughout the region and getting lots of feedback from them around how they see offices returning, how they see the future of employment playing out. So it's been really interesting feedback that we're getting. As you might imagine, there's a lot of uncertainty, right? So absolutely, it's a topic that we're interested in. Absolutely, it's a topic that has been identified as part of the strategy. But I will say there's a huge amount of unknown. You know, there's a huge amount of unknown beyond the fact that a lot more people will work in a flexible way. Yeah. But with changing technology, we just don't know where it's all going to go. And so, yeah, absolutely, we're going to be wanting to talk to employers and employment groups on an ongoing basis as part of this.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. It's really clear that we're competing with other regions as well. So, yeah, thanks, Steve.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Okay, thank you, Steve. I don't see any other questions. So thanks for your report. And we'll move on to the next agenda item where we have Jeff Cross, who's giving us a bit of a ridership update report. I guess this is a bit of a follow-on to some of the comments Kevin made in his opening report. So Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tony. Good morning, board members. I won't go into the full report as Kevin hit some of the key topics. There were some slides also included in that public report from last week's update. We're doing weekly updates, as you know, so I'm happy to field any questions specifically from the board about that. A couple of themes I just want to add to what Kevin described earlier. One thing you'll note in the report, we also track not just transit, but volumes on bridges in the region as a proxy for the amount of driving that's happening. We're obviously concerned about overall mobility. You'll see in some of those graphs that we've seen in the last couple of weeks a few times where we went over from at least those counts 100% of what we saw pre-COVID, which is a sign that people are moving more around the region as well, which is also concerning for congestion levels and reliability. And it puts more onus on us making sure that we achieve some of the mode share that we had pre-COVID in order to make sure that the overall system works as smoothly as possible. The other thing that we're seeing, building on the last set of questions from the board, obviously it was a great sign to have the post-secondary institutes go back and schools go back, and we saw that the market share, we're starting to look at this, the market share of what we had pre and post-COVID seems relatively similar given the bump up in volumes that we saw, and specifically on those routes to universities and colleges, so that we saw about 120,000 more boardings on a typical day, week over week. But that is not just universities. It looks higher than in previous years. So it does show that there is some increased activities either to other workplaces or other activities. That said, to the point that Steve posed, we don't yet know what the nature of future of work will look like. We have not moved from step 3 to step 4 in the provincial plan. So while there may be some marginal changes in how people are going back to the office, that fundamentally hasn't changed yet. We're seeing that, as you see in West Coast Express, which has maybe ticked up a bit, but not a lot. And that is, gives you a very good example of what the primarily office-based worker market, especially in downtown, looks like. So those are things that our team will be tracking in lockstep with guidance from the PHO in the province this fall, and to see what our market share for offices does look like. Kevin pointed out earlier, we have a pretty good sense that it will go nowhere but down from where it was pre-COVID, that more people are going to be working from home than they were before COVID. What they do with those other trips, we're not yet sure. Those discretionary trips, whether it's during the day for other social needs or service needs or on the weekends, et cetera, those are the kinds of things that we'll be tracking over time. But the other key point you'll see, we've had much more robust ridership on the weekends during the pandemic than we did during the weekdays. For that very reason, people are going to the office less, but those other trips remained a bit more constant for shopping, health, et cetera. That gap is starting to close. And while weekends are still a little bit higher, we are seeing that in the weekdays. So that will be something that we continue to track. And with that, I'll leave it there, Chair, and open it up to any questions.
Great, thank you, Jeff. There is some questions. I think, Jonathan, you have a question for Jeff?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the update and the reporting back. Obviously, this is something of keen interest to the TransLink board and the Mayor's Council there. And, I think it's been encouraging to see us see some life come back, because we were stuck at around between 40 and 45% for most of last year, and starting in June, obviously starting to trend in a more positive direction. The question I do have, though, is through this whole pandemic, we've spent a lot of time looking at various projection models about how transit ridership might evolve and come back. And I know there's been optimistic scenarios, there's been moderate scenarios, and there's been poor scenarios. And I guess I wanted to get a sense of where this uptick that's happened over the summer and what we're at least seeing in early fall, how that's matching up with some of the previous projection works that the planning team has been conducting through this whole process.
Thanks, Eric. That is something that we're following. It's a bit about breaking down by markets, and right now we don't have a complete sense yet to be able to report back, because we don't know what that return to work office environment and others will look like, as well as we don't have the tourist market to the same degree that we did pre-COVID. those kinds of things. But what I can say, based on where we're at in the Restart program, people's propensity to share rides, what we think that looks like, that we are tracking probably in the middle, closer to maybe the medium scenario of what we were looking at through that work. As Kevin pointed out, the range of that for 2022 is probably in the low 70s to about 90%. So it's a little bit early yet to kind of understand, but I think we're probably, if we come out of the pandemic sooner rather than later, we'll probably be more towards the middle of that, and we'll see what happens. There's no indicators yet that we are off base in that range of forecasting that we've been doing using the exploratory modeling at this time. So we'll be looking, as we collect another month or two of data, to kind of try and break down, you know, are we getting the same sort of share of student travel that we had before these other segments that would cause us pause to look at those models at this point, or do they still sort of hold true? And we'll have to wait and see until people start going back to work to understand where we're going to fall.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Larry?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Tell me, do you do the tracking of these numbers at a sub-regional level, not just for the whole region, but for sub-regional areas? Because I keep thinking that there could be a much more sluggish recovery in the overall region than you might see in certain areas, such as downtown or UBC or et cetera. Do we do that sub-regional, and are there any marked interesting trends there that we should be aware of?
We do sub-regional, especially at the sort of bus level. We're able to disaggregate it and take a look at it from that perspective. We had reported, I think, is many months ago, but we'll come back with this in December. It's a very good question. We had seen that south of the Fraser during the pandemic actually had much more robust numbers. When we were seeing 40, they were in the mid to high 50s. We can look at sort of typical corridors like Scott Road that we're seeing even higher levels, and then trying to understand why that would be the case. Some of it is, you know, demographics and proportion of the public that relies on transit for essential trips and essential workers. So we are seeing that there are very significant variations in that. To your point, obviously the downtown Vancouver market has probably been much lower, though not necessarily elsewhere in Vancouver. So we do that, and we can come back. It's also the work that we've been looking at to help us emphasize where do we anticipate, working with CMBC, to be allocating services as people come back, and where we're able to reallocate from areas that we know are lower demand right now and that we put very high frequency just for overcrowding. So that's an activity that we've had underway basically since March of 2020, and we continue to look at that.
And I think it could be at least an early indicator on the impact of remote work. If we could look at some of these very high employment areas and see, you know, just what is the recovery there, it might give us a sense of the trend on the impact of remote work moving forward.
Yes.
Okay, great. Don't see any other questions. So thank you, Jeff, for your report. We'll move on to item 13 in the agenda, which is the TransLink Corporate Safety and Health Policy. And Gigi, you're going to kick us off on this discussion.
I am. Thank you, Tony. I'm pleased to be here today to introduce the TransLink Safety and Health Corporate Policy. And joining me is Derek Stewart, our Director of Enterprise Safety and Emergency Management, who led the development of this particular policy. So as the board's aware, safety is very much a top priority and a core value for the TransLink enterprise, which consists of TransLink Corporate, what we call the parent company, as well as its bus and rail operating subsidiaries. So last year, the board did approve a safety commitment that will guide the safety-related activities of the enterprise. That's attached to the report. And the operating companies also have company-specific safety and health-related policies and practices. And Coast Mountain Bus Company provides shared services to TransLink Corporate with respect to employee safety and health. However, TransLink Corporate doesn't currently have its own formal policy. And so in order to address this, attached to this report is a proposed safety and health policy for TransLink Corporate. This policy is modeled after the Coast Mountain Bus Company policy. I would just like to note that when this report was presented to the Finance and Audit Committee for consideration, management did propose that it be delegated the authority to make minor amendments to the policy. But however, after some discussion, the committee amended the proposed resolution so that the board would simply be approving the policy itself as presented. So that is the resolution that you see in the report before you. This does mean that future amendments, whether major or minor, will come back before the board for approval. So with that, I'll conclude my remarks and open up for questions. Thank you, Tony.
Great. Thank you, Gigi. I don't see any questions here. It did come with a recommendation from the Audit and Finance Committee. So Sarah, did you have any comments you wanted to make, or did you want to move the motion?
I'll move the motion, Tony. Thank you.
Okay, second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that's carried unanimously. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Gigi and Derek. So the last item on the agenda is actually the consent agenda. In terms of what's in the consent agenda, we have the meeting minutes of June 17th. Two items require board approval, which is the TransLink rules and regulations on smoking and vaping and our development cost charges. And then three items that are just presented for information. Are there anybody who has any questions with respect to items on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing no questions, is someone prepared to move the consent agenda? Andy, thank you. Second?
So moved.
Thank you, Larry.
Larry
All
here.
in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that's carried unanimously. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the public meeting. I want to thank everybody who participated. And we look forward to seeing you at our next public meeting, which is going to be on December the 2nd. So again, thank you and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.